going on, operators, and welcome back to another video. This one's going to be very special. I know I say that every single time. All the videos are special, but today even more so because I feel like I'm in the presence of a legend here. And no, it's not who you think it is. It's actually an it. In this case, it is the Cadex Defense SS Pro, otherwise known as the 7 S.T.A.R.S Pro. It is one piece of kit. There's a lot going on here, and we're going to talk about everything from the tip to the butt. But before we do that, I just wanted to thank our friend Jamie for providing this rifle from Cadex Defense. This is actually his personal rifle as well, so all the more thanks to him for helping to make this video happen. We've kept him waiting, unfortunately, a lot longer than we'd like to due to previous obligations. But finally, we are out on the range. We're going to be putting some rounds down range. We've got the Hornady Black. This is the 5.56 NATO 75 grain, as you can see there. So we don't have too much with us today, but we'll be putting some rounds down range. We're at about 140, 150 meters, so it's not necessarily going to allow this rifle to stretch its legs just as much as it would like to, like we did about 3 or 4 weeks ago when we were shooting 1,000 yards with this thing. And there's so much to talk about. So let me stop here and we'll get into the details from the front to the back as always. Before we do continue though, we can't make these videos without your help. We've got some new products coming, and we have a really cool Black Friday sale coming up as well very soon, which is only for our email subscribers. So go to CanadianOperator.ca, scroll all the way to the bottom, get yourself signed up. We won't spam you, I promise. And you'll find out about our sale, and we've got some new products coming in November as well. So with all that shilling out of the way, let's go ahead and get this started and talk about the Cadex Defense SS, or the 7 S.T.A.R.S Pro. Okay, so as always, like we like to do on the channel here, we're going to start from the tip to the butt. But before we get into the firearm here, I want to talk about what's in front of it very quickly, because that's also important. So we're going to talk about the bolt, we're going to talk about the magazine, and then we're going to talk about the ammunition that we're going to be using today. So we'll start off with the bolt. And the bolt, well, I mean, it's bolt action, right? It's fairly simple, but the design on this is awesome. It's got a lot of weight to it, despite the fact that it's got a nice fluted design. We've got a nice anodized red, which is the color accent on this firearm handle here, which is great if you have bigger hands like I do. And even if you have smaller hands, generally speaking, that's going to work for you. The nice thing is you can always replace these if you'd like to. We have a little indicator here as well on the back of the bolt on the cap that's going to show you when your action is cocked. And then we have a prong design over here. You got 3 lugs, and these are really nicely sculpted. So there's a lot of work that's gone into this bolt. It does have some significant weight to it, as does the rest of the rifle. So I'm pretty sure the fluting here isn't necessarily going to reduce a lot of that weight, but it definitely helps this thing to look really nice and stand out. All right, so next up, we're going to take a look at the magazine, and this is what this rifle comes with. So your standard Cadex magazine. This is a double stack, single feed, 10-round magazine. So it's going to hold 10 rounds of our Hornady Black 5.56 75 grain ammunition. That's what we're going to be using today. We didn't really go for the whole match ammo thing. I mean, the black is pretty close to match. It's almost just as good, but we're only shooting at about 140, 150 meters. So consider that we're not going to be out to 6, 7, 8, 1,000 meters, you know, like we were about a month ago when we went to shoot this thing out in the wild. But this is a really solid magazine. It's got a nice hefty metal construction, a solid base plate, and of course, gotta love the CDX branding all over the sides of it. Next up, let's just very briefly talk about the actual ammo, and then we'll talk about the firearm. All right, guys, so let's talk about the ammo choice for today very quickly before we move on to taking a look at the rest of the firearm. For today, we have chosen the good old 5.56 by 45 NATO, but not just any one. We're going with the Hornady Black. It's a really nice middle of the road, not quite match, but way better than your standard everyday ammo. These are going to be 75 grain projectiles, so definitely a little bit heavier than what you're used to. And the reason for that is because we have a 1-in-8 twist in this barrel. What that means is that the rifling is going to be a lot more aggressive inside, and that is what's going to turn well, I'm turning the whole thing because I can't separate them, but it's going to turn your projectile faster. And what does that do? It provides stability, right? So we didn't get anything super high end because we're not shooting very far, only about 140 to 150 yards or meters, but we did want something that was going to be a nice kind of match grade ammo that was going to provide the weight that we need in order to be able to spin it super fast coming out of this 26-inch barrel and give it that stability that it needs so that it gives us the accuracy and the consistency that we need. So again, it's going to be the 5.56 by 45 NATO, the Hornady Black in 75 grain. But we'll let you know by the end of this video how that particular ammo shoots in this particular gun. With that said though, let's go ahead and move on to the actual gun. We're going to start with this muzzle brake. It is a 3-port muzzle brake. Absolutely awesome, super flat. It's got that signature Cadex design to it. And you know, you don't really need a muzzle brake of any kind on a 223 or a 556, but it is definitely nice to have. It adds a beautiful touch, it adds a lot of functionality, and of course, it's got that nice red paint as we have on the rest of the firearm as well. I personally kind of like red, if you haven't guessed. So yeah, I really like that. I like anything two-tone. I think it really looks good. In this case, the red and the black looks really nice together, and it's a great touch. Of course, you can definitely put something else on there if that's what creams your Twinkie, but at the end of the day, I think what they've got stock on here is going to do you just fine, and I mean, probably a lot better than almost anything else you can get out there. We're going to move on to the barrel next. All right, so next up, let's go ahead and talk about this barrel. There's a few things to mention here. As far as I'm concerned, now I tried to look on the Cadex website and I wasn't able to find it in my rush of trying to look it up, but as far as I know, this is a cold hammer forged barrel. It is 26 whole inches, giggity, and we do also have a nice straight fluting here as well. Again, probably not going to do much to remove any kind of weight because there's a lot of substantial weight here. In a way, it's a really good thing, but what it does do, it helps to manage thermal performance a little bit better. It helps a more even distribution of heat when that barrel heats up, and that allows you to have more consistency in your shots. So, very nice barrel. I mean, I think 26 is maybe a little overkill, but considering the fact that we were taking this thing out to 1,000 yards about a month ago, definitely makes sense. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about this handguard next. All right, so next up, let's talk about the handguard here. And I don't know if I would even call this a handguard. I'd probably call this like the receiver or the body of the rifle, because as you can see, as far as to my eyes, it looks like it's all one piece, which is really nice. That is definitely going to give you a lot more consistency as opposed to having stuff bolted together. Now, with respect to features, we've got some amazing Cadex stickers on the top here, stuck on there by Jamie, no doubt, and that does improve your accuracy by an order of 33.33, repeating, of course, percent. But other than that, of course, we have a bunch of MLOKs on the side, and one of my favorite features, let me unlock this for you so I can show you what this looks like. We have an Arca rail on the bottom where you can slide your, I believe this is the Falcon Light bipod. They do have their standard Falcon as well. That would work here, given all the correct attachment points with regards to the Arca Swiss mount, but my God, is that awesome. I go through, I don't know how many rifles where I have to put a bipod on, and that just absolutely drives me nuts. One of the things that I really liked is when I was doing the review for the Black Label bipods. If you haven't seen that, by the way, you can check the video up on the top right-hand corner of your screen. But I loved that product because it basically stows right in to the handguard. Well, this is kind of a nice in-between. It allows you to take it off completely and have the entire usability of the handguard, or put it on. But once you have it on, you've got an infinite amount of adjustment from front to back. You can adjust the swivel, and you can also adjust the cant as well, which we'll get to when we talk about the bipod in a bit more detail. Of course, this is not something that comes with the rifle, and you can get it separately. That being said, I'm pretty sure I mentioned this already, but I do like the idea that this whole thing is basically one whole piece that's going to give you a lot of stability, strength, and consistency, and that's actually not something that I've seen before. Now, of course, on the top here, it's quite flat. We don't have any other rails like you may see in some other rifles, and to be honest, you don't need it. Right, anything that you would want to attach, maybe a LAM unit or something like that, you can very comfortably do on the side with some MLOKs. You can even get some of the MLOK to Picatinny adapters that we've actually also covered, and you could definitely do that. It's very, very simple, but you don't really need to have anything else on the top, and I like how it's kind of a no-frills attitude. There's just nothing here because there doesn't need to be, because we've got our Razor Gen 3 sitting on a nice Cadex Gen 2 mount right on top of the receiver. And I guess one of the other things that we could talk about that doesn't apply to this specific rifle is that some rifles have that pick rail right above the receiver, or maybe integrated into the receiver, and then have a detachable handguard with yet another pick rail there. And there's, you know, I've always said this, never ever mount your scope in between. I know we're getting off on a little tangent there, but that is part of what allows you to lose accuracy and consistency in your shooting. And the fact that they don't have anything here really just tells that entire story. There's the pick rail, mount the scope there. You don't need anything else up front. And I just really like that very simple attitude and making something that is beautiful, but also very functional. Let's go ahead and move on to the actual bipod before moving on to the rest of the rifle. Okay, so let's just briefly talk about the bipod here. I almost said tripod. There's a reason for that. I'm getting old. That's one, but you'll find out what the other one is in a second. And that is our Cadex bipod as well. It's a Falcon Light. They do make a sturdier standard Falcon in a couple of different configurations. But this one's the Light, and honestly, you don't really need much more than that. It does look like a standard bipod, but just the feel of it is really nice. So the first thing that we can do is we can open up this little hinge over here, this little clasp, and as you've seen before, that's going to allow us to move this all the way down and all the way forward. And if we lock that so I don't drop the gun, because Jamie would never forgive me for that, we've got a little lever here which you can actually pull out and move. So that allows you to control your cant, right? So we've got cant there. That feels probably like about, I'd say a good 40 to 50 degrees of cant, which is nice, but you also have control over your swivel as well. So when you're in the dirt and you're just doing your shooting, you can be sure that you're going to be able to configure this thing in whatever way is going to be comfortable for you. One of the things that I mentioned in my Black Label bipod video was that if you're canted and you're shooting at a longer distance, that can affect your accuracy. It can affect the trajectory of the projectile. And that's really not a good thing, right? You want to make sure that even if you're not on even terrain, that you set yourself up to be as straight as possible when you're shooting. That is going to give you the best consistency and the best accuracy. And we were able to prove that is going to help you a lot. Now, one of the things I should mention here, of course, we have the standard leg adjustments, and we can actually adjust them forward and back. I'm not going to do it right now because we have very limited space, but you can adjust your legs forward and back here, so that can give you a little bit more customizability in how you approach a given situation, or you know, where you get comfortable to do your shooting. One of the other things I should mention is because this is Arca Swiss compatible, you do also have the ability to shoot on a tripod, and that is really awesome. We did a lot of that last month, and you know, we had a lot of people shooting in the grass. We had people shooting on a bench, much like this one, but we also had a lot of people setting up on a nice tripod, and that gives you a really nice solid shooting platform where you can really dial in your shots. And when you're shooting a longer distance, maybe this is not going to be super applicable to stuff like competitive PRS shooting, because there's going to be a standard where everybody has to meet the same standard to be competitive. But if you're just shooting out on your own or you're shooting with friends, it's so beneficial to be able to put your firearm on a tripod. It gives you a lot of stability, but most importantly, it gives you a lot of consistency. And if you have consistency, you have repeatability, which leads to better accuracy. So that is a great way to mount your rifle if you have that set up. Being a camera guy, I also have a bunch of tripods at home, so I'm sure if I had an Arca Swiss system like this, that I'm sure Cadex would send me for a review, then yeah, I'm pretty sure I'd be able to hook one up to one of my tripods and be good to go. With that said though, let's go ahead and move on to the rear part of the rifle here. All right, so next up, let's go ahead and talk about the magwell, the trigger, and the grip before we finally move on to the very end here, because there's some really cool stuff here as well. So let's go ahead and open this up. Nothing in the chamber, nothing in the magwell. And speaking of the magwell, it's honestly not much to write home about. And if I had to find a complaint about anything on this gun, it would be the magwell. It's very uninspired to me. Yes, it looks really cool, but I prefer function over form. And I would really, especially at this price point, like to have a nice flared magwell on the inside. So when I'm putting that magazine in, it just guides it nicely into place and I don't have to worry about it. So that is probably the only thing that I've got to say about that. Let's move on to the trigger, because this, ladies and gentlemen, is where the magic is. This is the DX2 Evo, and I would have probably been forgiven for thinking it was made by somebody else, but of course it was made by Cadex, because this is a Cadex rifle, and my God, is it awesome. First of all, I don't have my trigger gauge with me today, but it is a 1.5 to 2.5 pound adjustable trigger, and I want you to listen to what this sounds like. Nothing in the chamber, by the way, absolutely nothing in the magwell as well. And we'll just try to get it nice and close so you guys can hear what this sounds like. Barely any pressure, by the way. That felt like a hair over 1.5 pounds, if it was that. And I would say that that is a good thing. but it can also be a bad thing. The reason why it can be a bad thing is that if you are coming to this from something that doesn't have a trigger so advanced and so incredibly over-engineered, that you are going to be having to be very careful about how you handle that trigger and getting used to having a trigger that light. Of course, you can bring it up to 2.5 pounds. That will make it a lot easier to learn, and then you can slowly decrease as you go. But considering the fact that you can also change this from single stage to double stage and back, that is also something that you probably won't see on almost any other trigger. And the fact that that is available to you will help that transition period if you're coming, let's say, from a Tikka, like me, the T3X TAC A1, one of my favorite rifles around. It fits my budget and it does what I need it to do. Obviously, it can't hold a candle to this, but hey, if I wanted to get myself ready and go from that Tikka to here, I could make this a 2-stage trigger. I could adjust it to within probably 1/2 pound or maybe 3/4 pound of what the Tikka does, because the Tikka is around that 2 3/4, 3 pound mark. And I could eventually train myself to get down to that 1.5 pounds. And I could even switch it over to single if that's what I like. So the trigger is absolutely awesome. All I've got to say is if you're coming over from something that's a little heavier and not as over-engineered, you definitely got to be careful because it's very easy to have a negligent discharge with a trigger that's sensitive. Moving on, the last thing I want to talk about is the grip here. It's really nice. It's rubberized. It's over-molded. It feels great in your hand, giggity. And also you've got that bulbousness on the side. And I really like that because like the CO AR Comfort Grip, available CanadianOperator.ca, you've got a nice conformity to the actual geography of your hand. It makes you feel comfortable. You don't have these odd angles and weird sort of squarey or rectangularly shaped edges. It just feels nice. And with all that out of the way, let's finally talk about the ass end of this baby because my God, is there some customizability here. All right, so last but not least, let's talk about the butt end of this thing. There's a lot of customizability here, but first and foremost, we've got a little thing here that you can just click backwards ever so gently, and that is going to allow you to get your stock out of the way. So whether you want to store this thing in a smaller bag, you're going to be able to do that. Obviously, I've got my bolt in there, so I'm not going to go all the way, but you can do that. In any case, you also have some other adjustments here as well. You've got your cheek well right here, which can be adjusted up and down. Sorry, Jamie, I'm totally screwing up your ergonomics here. And then you also do have your length of pole adjustment. Now, the cool thing about this is I thought the plates were how you adjust the length of pole. Thankfully, I was wrong. If I can see what this looks like here, you get a little lever that you rotate here, and then you can pull and push, and you've got some nice distinct clicks in there, which will let you know how far you've gone out. So you can count those clicks, you can note that down, and you've got some dope for your ergonomics, which is actually kind of nice. It's all made out of metal. It feels really nice. The only thing that's not metal is this plastic piece here and this little rubber piece back here, obviously for comfort reasons. But yeah, infinitely adjustable. You have different kinds of scopes, obviously, that you can put on this, and depending on how high or low you've got it or how much forward or backwards you've got it based on your personal dimensions, you can adjust this infinitely to suit your needs. So that being said, let's go ahead and do a few shooting tests now. I really want to get some rounds down range and see how accurate we can go. We've got a nice zero stop on here that will get us down to 100, so that's going to be pretty close, and then we'll have to make some adjustments. So for that, let's go ahead and put this thing through some of its paces at the 140-yard range while we still got some sun, and we'll wrap it up with some of my thoughts and whether I think this is worth it. Whew. The trigger is so light. It scares the shit out of me because I'm not expecting it to go off and it just goes off. But I gotta tell you right now, the weight of this rifle really makes a big difference. I mean, you definitely feel a little bit of a jump, but you barely have to touch that trigger, and it just wants to go. Which is actually a really good thing, because moving your trigger, I mean, even putting pressure on the trigger can really offset you. It could change your aim. It could, especially for longer distances. I mean, for 140, what we're shooting right now, it's not a big deal, but any kind of input whether it be breathing or adjusting your arm or your hand or anything like that. Talking for that matter. Can make a pretty big difference. Oh man, that really feels different being on this side of the rifle as opposed to being behind the rifle. All right, everybody, so let's go ahead and wrap up the 7 S.T.A.R.S Pro by Cadex Defense. I want to talk a little bit about the accuracy, though. At about 150 meters here, we were able to get about an MOA to an MOA and a half, which is probably about as good as is going to come out of my talent, or lack thereof for that matter. So yeah, very capable rifle. We were able to get this thing really dialed in at the 1,000-meter range, though, when we were there about a month ago, and we were shooting targets consistently at 4, 5, plus 100 meters very easily. Okay, so let's talk about my final thoughts here. Should you get it? Should you not? There's actually two answers here. There is a subjective answer, and then there's an objective answer. Subjectively, I love this rifle. It's awesome. The ergonomics are phenomenal. The look is like just, I mean, if looks could kill, right? The accuracy is fantastic. The customizability is infinite. The ergonomics feel awesome. The attachment points for accessories, it's all there. Everything you could ever need. Why wouldn't you want this thing? But then I kind of tried to start thinking logically a little bit about this and realizing that this is a very specialized tool for a very specialized market. That being said, we're going to go ahead and end it here. Thank you so very much for watching. I hope that you found this video helpful and enjoyable. Leave me your thoughts down below. If you are a Cadex rifle owner as a civilian, it would be great to hear from you. Of course, we also have our Discord. We'll link that down below as well. And if you like the video, you can help us out in a big way by just remembering to become a subscriber with notifications turned on, and share the video, like it. And of course, if you want to go above and beyond, you can do what these wonderful people did over here, and that is become a VIP. That'll be linked down below as well. We have VIP memberships for individuals and businesses as well. You can, of course, check out our website, canadianoperator.ca. We have a bunch of goodies coming up and a really, really big sale coming up in November, so make sure to watch out for that. Do become an email subscriber there so that you don't miss that. But however you choose to support us, thank you so much. We really can't do these videos without you, so I just hope you know how grateful I am, and our whole tiny little team here is for all of your support. Yeah, hopefully we'll talk to you in the Discord. This is definitely a great rifle to talk about some more. But for now, we still have a little bit of sunlight here, so we're going to do a little bit more B-roll and shooting and stuff like that. We'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you again so much for watching. I really appreciate you, and hope you enjoyed it. Until next time, happy shooting.